The rain had already started by the time little Aram left the school gate, clutching his backpack against his chest. The clouds hung low and heavy over the small town, and each raindrop felt like a tap on his worried heart. He walked slowly, dragging his shoes through puddles, thinking about the small folded paper tucked deep inside the front pocket of his bag, a paper that held more weight than its size suggested. Inside lay a note he had written for his mother, a note he wasn't brave enough to give her in person. They hadn't talked much these last few weeks. She seemed always tired, always somewhere else in her thoughts. Aram wanted to tell her he missed her hugs, her laughter, her warm voice calling him my sunshine, but whenever he tried to speak, the words didn't come. So he wrote everything in a letter instead, every fear, every worry, and every hope he carried. But even as he wrote it, he wasn't sure she would want to read it. Thunder rumbled overhead as he turned into the narrow alley that led home. He pressed his hand against his pocket, checking if the note was still there, still safe. It felt like the only thing he truly owned these days, his feelings, his truth. He promised himself that tonight, he would slip it under her door, even if he couldn't hand it to her directly. But promises are tricky things. As he ran across the street to avoid a speeding car, his backpack jerked open. He didn't notice, not until he reached the front of their small apartment building and realized the front pocket felt too light. His heart dropped. He spun around, eyes wide, scanning the street. His notebooks were safely inside, his pencils too. But the folded paper, the note, was gone. Rain slapped the pavement as he raced back along the road, searching every puddle, every corner, every gust of wind that might have carried it. Cars splashed past him, drenching his already soaked shirt, but he didn't care. His note, his feelings, his words, they were out there, somewhere, drifting away from him. He didn't find it. By the time he returned home, breathless and defeated, the sky had darkened further. His mother, Aisha, looked up from the couch when he entered, her eyes red from another long day. She opened her mouth to speak, but Aram mumbled, "I'm fine," and rushed to his room. She hesitated for a second, wanting to reach out, but she didn't. She was tired, and the world felt heavier than usual. Aram sat on his bed, hugging his knees and staring at the window. The rain outside blurred the view. He whispered to himself, "It's hopeless now," and tucked his face against his knees. He felt smaller than he ever had. Across town, the lost note lay plastered against the sidewalk near a bus stop, its ink beginning to bleed from the rain. That's where 68-year-old Mr. Karim found it. He had been on his way home from the pharmacy, walking slowly with his umbrella tilted against the wind, when something white fluttering near the curb caught his eye. Normally, he didn't pay attention to litter, he barely had the strength to carry himself these days. But something about this paper, soaked yet stubbornly clinging to the ground, made him pause. He bent down, knees protesting, and picked it up gently. The words were smudged in places, the rain having blurred the edges of sentences, but enough remained to understand the meaning. It was a letter. A child's letter. And within the shaky handwriting, he read the aching honesty of a young heart. "Mom, I'm scared you don't see me anymore. I miss when you smiled at me. I want you to know I'm trying to be good. Please don't be sad all the time. I just want you to know I love you." A raindrop fell on the page, and though Karim wasn't sure whether it came from the sky or his own eye, he carefully slipped the note into the inner pocket of his coat, holding it like something fragile and precious. Karim lived alone. His wife had passed away years ago, and his daughter lived in another country. Once upon a time, he had been surrounded by noise, laughter, warm breakfasts, and affectionate chaos. Now his days were quiet. Too quiet. As he walked home, he couldn't stop thinking about the child who had written such words. The longing in the sentences reminded him of nights he wished he had listened more to his daughter instead of brushing aside her small emotional storms. The regret that had lived with him ever since whispered in his ear now. You can help someone else, even if you can't change the past. By the time he reached his small apartment, he had made a decision. The next morning, holding the dried piece of paper safely between a new envelope, he set out toward the school district printed faintly on the back of the letter. The note had no name, but the handwriting looked young, maybe around 4th or 5th grade. Someone at the school might recognize it. And even if they didn't, he had to try. At the school office, he explained gently, holding the envelope between both hands. The receptionist listened, surprised but touched. She looked through the list of recent lost and found reports but found nothing matching. She said the teachers might help, so she took the letter inside. They spent the rest of the morning comparing the handwriting to classwork samples. It was difficult, the ink had run in places, but one of the teachers finally pointed out, "This looks like Aram's handwriting. He writes his A's in this exact shape." They called Aram's mother. Aisha arrived half an hour later, confused and worried. When the receptionist handed her the envelope, she hesitated before opening it. But the moment she saw the words, her son's words, her breath caught. She pressed a hand to her lips, eyes blurring with tears. She had no idea he felt this lost. No idea he missed her. No idea she had drifted so far from him. Life had been difficult, life was still difficult. Ever since her husband passed away 2 years ago, she had been fighting a silent battle inside herself, balancing work, grief, exhaustion, and trying to be 3 people at once. In the process, she hadn't realized she'd become a shadow in her son's world. The letter pierced her heart. She whispered, "Where did you find this?" The receptionist gestured toward the hallway where Kareem waited quietly. Aisha approached him with trembling hands. "Thank you," she said softly, voice breaking. "Thank you for bringing this back to me." Kareem looked at her tired eyes, the kind burdened with too many responsibilities. He smiled gently. "The note, it was meant for you. It found me first, but it knew where it belonged." Aisha wiped her tears, nodding. "I didn't know he felt this way." "Children carry silent storms," Kareem replied. "Sometimes all they need is for us to notice." She held the letter close to her chest, as though hugging her son from afar. She thanked Kareem again and rushed home, eager to see Aram before he returned from school. When she arrived, she placed the note carefully on his pillow and waited in the living room, rehearsing the apology her heart longed to give. That afternoon, when Aram walked in, his eyes widened at the sight of his mother sitting on the couch, waiting for him with an expression he hadn't seen in a long time, gentle, warm, open. "Come here, my sunshine," she said softly. He froze. She hadn't called him that in months. Slowly, he stepped toward her. She lifted him into her arms the moment he was close enough, holding him tightly, so tightly he felt her heart pounding against his cheek. "I read your note," she whispered. "I'm so sorry, Aram. I didn't see how much you were hurting. I didn't see how far away I had gone. I'm here now. I promise you, I'm here." Aram's throat tightened. You found it. I lost it." "I know," she said with a smile through tears. "But it found its way back to me." He hugged her fiercely, relief flooding his small frame. For the first time in a long while, he felt her warmth, her presence, her love surrounding him like a blanket he had missed dearly. That evening, Aisha and Aram cooked dinner together. She asked him about school, his friends, his favorite games. He asked her why she'd been sad. She explained gently, honestly, promising she would work harder to share her feelings and not hide behind silence. It was the beginning of healing for both of them. Meanwhile, back in his modest apartment, Kareem sat by his window sipping warm tea. The world outside was quiet. But in his heart, he felt something shift, something warm. A small act, he thought, could ripple through many lives. A lost note had given him purpose for a day. Helping someone reconnect had soothed an old ache inside him. A few days later, there was a knock on his door. When he opened it, he found Aisha standing there with Aram beside her. Aram held a handmade card that said, "Thank you for bringing my heart home," written in bright, careful letters. A small drawing of a note with wings decorated the corner. Kareem's eyes softened. "For you," Aram said shyly. "And for checking on us," Aisha added. "You helped us more than you know." Kareem accepted the card as though it were made of gold. And to him, it was. From that day on, Aram often visited him after school, sometimes bringing cookies, sometimes just stories. They played chess, talked about books, and laughed about silly things. Aisha would check in regularly, making sure Kareem had groceries, medicines, and company when he needed it. What started as a lost note grew into a bond between 3 lonely hearts who needed each other more than they realized. One evening months later, as the sun dipped behind the buildings and painted the sky in shades of orange and pink, Aram asked Kareem, "Do you think the note was magic?" Kareem chuckled. Why do you say that? Because it got lost, but it still reached the right place. Kareem rested a hand on his shoulder. Some things in life find their way home no matter how far they wander. Love is one of them. And kindness is another. Aram thought about that and smiled. His note had carried his fears, his wishes, his love. And even though the rain had tried to wash it away, even though the wind had tried to hide it, even though he himself had lost it, kindness had carried it the rest of the way. It had found Mr. Kareem. It had found his mother. It had found its way home. And so had he.